What's going on, everyone? So this James Harden mess is just that, an absolute mess. And look, James Harden has no one to blame but himself, right? I mean, this guy took a gamble and bet on himself and lost, right? He believed that he was going to have contract offers and that the Houston Rockets were going to want him back and he was going to be able to go to Houston and go to the strip clubs and live his best life and, be on the strip club Hall of Fame, as we know. And Houston said, yeah, we just don't want that around our young guys. We just don't. Right? And they went and got veteran guys that can come in, make an impact, make a presence. And Houston very likely is going to be pretty decent. I actually think they're going to be very good. I wouldn't be shocked if they're a play-in team, maybe even a potential playoff team. They got some really good, nice balance. I think Houston overpaid for pretty much all of their guys, but it's sad to think that Houston was willing to overpay for guys like Jeff Green and Landale and Van Vliet, rather than giving James Harden money. And he probably would have taken a discount to go to Houston, right? And they said, nah, we're good on that part, right? And it's because when you look at James Harden and what he's done, it's been a mess, right? Like, he's always been a great regular season player. But, like, what has he really achieved as far as winning goes, right? Now, maybe if you didn't run into the Golden State Warriors in their prime and in their heyday, maybe Houston would have a couple NBA championships. It's very possible. But time and time again, James Harden has shown the ability to just completely disappear in the regular season or in the playoffs. And he's not the same guy he once was. He's not that just like, I can go get 40, 10, and 10 on any given night. No, he's just not, right? Like, he likes to think he is. And he has shown at times he can, but for him to be that MVP superstar level guy, he's just not that anymore. He needs to go to a roster in which he's like the third guy. But look, Daryl Morey has no obligation to trade this guy, right? He stuck to his contract. And look, Daryl Morey, if he finds something that makes sense, then he will, I believe, absolutely trade James Harden, right? But he's not going to just unload James Harden. They're almost better off letting James Harden walk next year because then they'd have all this money in which they could build a new team with a bunch of available guys next year. Like next year's free agency, granted, we'll see what it looks like between now and then, but at first glance, it looks like a pretty good free agency. So if you're Daryl Morey, you're looking at it as like, look, it's a win-win. He's not going to sit out, so he's going to play. And, you still have a good enough team that can contend. And if you don't, and he leaves, so be it. Like, what return are you going to get for James Harden at this point? What team is lining up to trade a bunch of assets for a guy that can't be your number one guy, that completely disappears in the playoffs, has been a basically journeyman at this point, not because teams want to get rid of him, but because of him. It's like every place he goes, it's a different excuse. And he's just completely quit on teams. So, like, if you're whomever, right, like, what team is looking at that and going, man, you know what we need to do? We need to trade for James Harden, right? Let's give up a bunch of assets for a guy that as soon as he feels slighted, he's just going to quit on us and demand a trade. It's just, it's a disaster. James Harden needs to look in the mirror, and he needs to look in the mirror fast, because we have seen guys go down this trajectory and just get completely out of the league, right? Because, like, what team is going to want to pay for him knowing that if he doesn't like something, that's it, right? Like, what organization is going to do that? I mean, we saw guys like Allen Iverson just completely, because he thought he was still this, that, and the other, completely out of the league when he probably still had another 3 to 5 years left. Carmelo Anthony, right? He had to take a look in the mirror. You've seen several guys have to take a look in the mirror. And now look, James Harden isn't 40, and he's still a very good player. Don't get me wrong. He's coming off a very good season, but he's not so good anymore that you can deal with the nonsense, right? He's not so good that it's like, okay, well, man, it's hard not. He's 33 years old. He's going to be 34 next year, right? Like, he's not 26-year-old, 27-year-old James Harden where it's like, he's just so good, you got to kind of keep, put up with the BS. No, you don't. It's like, dude, You wanted this. You came here. We traded for you. If you want to leave at the end of the year, leave at the end of the year. But we're not gonna like. Why would Philly go and trade and take on a bunch of salary and like it makes no sense. He's not gonna want to go to like a Detroit and where they could get a bunch of young guys that makes like no, it just they're not gonna do that. It makes no sense for Detroit. It makes no sense for them. Like the likelihood of James Harden having to finish this year with the Sixers is very likely, right? But look, James Harden, again, he wants to go to the Clippers, right? And he makes a world of sense for the Clippers. Now, I still don't believe in the Clippers, even if they get James Harden, simply on the fact that like they just can't stay healthy, right? Like Russell Westbrook and James Harden would be solid with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, right? But if you end up going and acquiring James Harden and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard can't stay healthy, then it doesn't matter. Every year is the Clippers year. It's been the Clippers year every year for the last like 15 years. And every year they fall short. And it's because they just can't stay healthy. And James Harden, though, if everybody is healthy, James Harden would probably be in the perfect situation for the player he is now. He is a really good playmaker. He is really good at the point guard position. And that's like the biggest thing the Clippers need. But the Clippers don't have anything that makes sense for the Sixers. Now, they have a bunch of expiring contracts, so you could trade and acquire a bunch of expiring guys, but like the Clippers don't have a bunch of draft. Like if the Clippers had like 4 firsts or something like that, 4 or 5 firsts, and then a bunch of expiring contracts, I think Philly would have done this yesterday, right? Like, oh yeah, we'll take all these expiring contracts, give you a bunch of first round picks, cool, let's do it. Yeah, let's do that, right? But they don't have that, and James Harden does, in my opinion, needs to go to a place where he's basically the third guy. He's the point guard that has 2 reliable guys that can take over at any given moment. And then James Harden on any given night can be that finisher. He can be that go-to guy. But we've seen Daryl Morey play hardball. And James Harden's whole reason for wanting out, it makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. He's upset because Daryl Morey didn't come and talk to him immediately because they got fined last year for doing that. And if they would have done that, it would have violated everything again. And they would have been fined again as a repeat offender. He couldn't. And James Harden is slighted by that. It's the silliest thing in the world. What that tells me is no, you just wanted out. It's not because of anything else other than you just were looking for an excuse and you found it. Just like you did at every other place you've been at. Right? Like it's just, and he's not a winning player. Like if this was a guy that's won 5 championships, then it's like, like man, if he comes, he's a guy that knows how to win. He's a guy that's been there. Like he could bring a lot. Like no, the guy just, he can't win. He can't get out of the second round. Right? Like it's just, I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze for James Harden. For the Clippers are all in. They're already over the top when it comes to like the aprons and all that stuff. You got Steve Ballmer who he doesn't care. He'll pay whatever it takes and do whatever it takes. So I do think it makes sense for the Clippers. But it's like at what point does the Clippers just end up doing something or saying something, or James Harden doesn't feel like he's in a position, or do you end up trading like Paul George or something? Right? Do you go and acquire? Do you work something out to where you trade Paul George to get back James Harden? Maybe, right? But the idea is for them to add James Harden to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. But I just don't see a scenario where the Clippers are going to be able to do that, and I don't see a scenario for Philly. Like the Clippers don't have anything that Philly would want. Like what would Philly want? Like Bones Highland? Like no. Like it doesn't make any sense. And Daryl Morey is in no obligation to appease James Harden, right? And look, it's not like I've talked about the Blazers situation, right? Damian Lillard, and how I think Portland needs to do whatever it takes and just trade Dame to where he wants to go, even if you have to take a loss. because of perception and just what he's done for that organization and sticking in. Now, they, again, have no obligation to do so whatsoever, but I look at them as for the long-term game, right? Like, you're not a real favorable free agent destination. The last thing you want to do is look bad to the one guy that's stuck out and has been the most loyal in your franchise history, right? Like, that's not what you want to do. In the James Harden situation, it will affect nothing. If they play hardball with James Harden, nobody's going to care because he's already built that reputation and he's already put himself in a bad position with demanding and forcing his way to Brooklyn and then going and forcing his way to Philly. And now he's going to what? Force his way, let's say, to the Clippers. Let's say he does get to the Clippers. Like, if Daryl Morey just makes him ride out the season and James Harden throws a tantrum and he pouts and he cries and all that stuff, it's not going to have the impact. No, but there's not going to be a player in the league that's like, man, they really did James Harden dirty. No, because everyone already knows James Harden has been a head case. The dude's would rather go to a strip club and live it up than focus on winning. You know, he was going to strip clubs in between games in the playoffs and stuff. And it's like, dude, and then you come back and you lay a goose egg. Like, what are we doing here? James Harden, I think more than likely is going to end up playing for the Sixers. At least starting. Maybe they find something as the season progresses. Maybe a team feels like they're right there and, just says, all right, let's push our chips to the table and go get a James Harden. That could very well be a possibility. That could be something. But I don't think they have to. I don't think that Daryl Morey has to do anything that he wants. I just don't. I just think if James Harden was smart, he would ride out this year in Philly, play to the best of his ability, and then try to work something out. Try to go work out a sign and trade or something, or, whatever. Philly makes no sense to just trade and do whatever he wants. But I think this is going to be quite the soap opera, right? I think it's going to be quite interesting. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think happens with James Harden? Think he stays with Philly? Think he goes elsewhere? What do you think of this drama? Do you think that the Sixers and Daryl Morey give James Harden what he wants and trades him to the Clippers? Do you think it makes no sense? However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, again, love to hear it. Let me know down in the comment section below.